Hello my friends, we have some updates on the military map, some good news, bad news as usual, so let's zoom to the bad news first, to Marinka. Russia tries to get that small village, or it's better to say small town, for a very long time, and today they were able to get a couple of quarters under their control. But what is interesting about the city, it's totally being demolished by the Russian artillery and aviation bombs. For Russians it took more than 1 year to get across this city. This was the old border with the self-proclaimed DNR or DPR Republic. So today we have the changes. So it was yesterday and it is today. Unfortunately, they took the land. Why does Ukraine is able to resist the Russian attacks in that town? Because this particular town was prepared for this scenario for a long time, even before the war had started. Because this town is just on the front lines, it was there for a very long time. Russia still was able to capture some of the towns and cities across the front lines where they used more resources, for example over here near to the Bakhmut, and also they assaulted from the northeast side. But at some places, like for example here near to New York, yes, we have that small town over there as well, the same name as New York in the United States. So Russians were not able to penetrate the front line to reach New York. And the good news are coming from Avdiivka today. So yesterday there was the counteroffensive of Ukrainian army. We took some ground over here, so let's check it again. It was day before yesterday, and it is today. So we pushed Russians also on the south part over here. Good news. Because before they tried their attack from the south on Avdiivka, but as you can see it's unsuccessful. If we go to Bakhmut for today, there is no any change. However, Wagner forces claim that they've took 120 meters of the area, but where exactly it happened so far we don't have the update, so there is no change for today in the city itself. Bakhmut holds, and we have some of the good news from our military command about this particular city. Today the general commander of the eastern flank of the Ukrainian armed forces, Syrsky, said that Ukrainian army went on a counterattack in Bakhmut to push Wagners away from the important positions. I may confirm that because yesterday we saw the change in the military map. Ukraine got one of the quarters with some of the residential buildings in Bakhmut. However, in general, I think that Ukraine would gradually withdraw from the Bakhmut city and concentrate on a future counterattack, which will be on the other place, because it's very strange to perform the counterattack inside the Bakhmut because Russia has lots of the forces in that area. So I guess that Ukraine will concentrate on the south direction to reach Crimea. We also have the fire exchange near to Kherson. For example, today Russia claimed that there was the building where Ukrainian soldiers were and they used the artillery to target it. It happened near to Pudova Protoka and Stary Dnipro channel over here. We got the location from the deep state resource, and Russia even published the video from the drone, but there were no any signs of any kind of the movement. They just fired their artillery towards the house, eliminating it, claiming that there were Ukrainians. And knowing the Russian resources, I would better not trust them at this point at least. The deep state resource was also able to identify the locations of the Russian soldiers based on their satellite or phone connection. So as you can see, the highest concentration is in the Bakhmut area over here. It looks like the weather front line, the thunderstorm out there. Today President Zelensky said that we have to fight more Russians in that area than, for example, Hungarian and Czech army together. So it's still the hottest spot out there, but on the south you will not see that concentration compared to Donbass. So I wouldn't say that Russia is getting ready for the future counteroffensive. Yes, they dig down into the ground building some outstanding trenches, but it will not help if they will not gather their army on the south. And later in this video we're gonna speak about those trenches and how Ukrainian army may deal with them. More about Avdiivka. Today it was the heavy fighting in that area, and we have the video also published by the Deep State Map resource. Unfortunately, I cannot show you the full video on YouTube. For that, please go to my Telegram channel. If something goes wrong with my YouTube channel, you may always find me on Telegram, and there I upload upload more regularly. So my friends, I highly recommend you to join me over there. So today it was the movement, and Ukraine used some of the armored vehicles in that area to attack the Russian trenches that they were able to build during the winter campaign. And we took a couple of the BTRs, they went over there, and the mission, the attack or the counterattack was successful, and our guys went into the trenches to clean them from the Russians. As you can see from above, the artillery shelling totally ruined the forest line, so there is no way to hide. So about the future counterattack, it's May already and it may happen every day, but still the soil is kind of soft, but the next week should be okay and almost with no rains. And today there were some of the explosions reported in Tokmak and near to Mikhailivka, the very important supply hubs for the Russian army. Russia, however, was able to build the significant defense lines in that area. Those are outstanding and one of the biggest in the history of wars. If we speak about their lengths, one of the lines goes from Melitopol to Berdansk. It's around 75 kilometers. And the British intelligence confirms that, but big and outstanding doesn't always mean good. So high maneuverable forces will be able to go from the rear to the Russian army, totally demolishing it. So let's go for the plan of the counterattack by Ukrainian forces. It's not my idea, I was able to find it on the media resources. This plan was published by one of the American soldiers who knows the tactics. So this is the phase 1 Ukrainian army and some of the Russian forces. We have the minefield with those cones as well and the trenches in the area. So our idea is to go and penetrate everything, to go back into the Russian positions from behind. The phase 1 is called the surveillance phase, where we need to collect as much information as possible from this particular area. We need to know the exact position of the Russian forces. It could be done with the help of the drones and the satellites. Also, we need to understand the quantity of the soldiers, the weaponry that they have, and their artillery systems, whether they have enough shells or how the supplies are organized into that area. Also, we need to get the information about the minefield. Sometimes it's hard to get, but I think that we can manage it. Also, at this part there could be some of the small groups sent to the front lines. It's not a suicide mission or something, but the Russians will start their fire, so we'll be able to identify their positions and also the spots for their artillery. So when we know everything, then we collected our forces and the weather is good, we can go to the stage 2 or phase 2, the preparation for the counterattack. Basically, on this stage you may eliminate some of the Russian resources, their positions, their artillery, and also supplies. And depends on the range from your forces, you may use mortars for the first line, artillery for the second line, and precision artillery to target the enemy artillery or their supply lines. For the long-distance precision fire, we may use the Excalibur shells for our systems and also HIMARS, which is very precise, and I guess with the HIMARS you can reach far behind the front lines to target the ammunition of the enemy side, for example, that we do right now in Tokmak and Mikhailivka, as I said to you before. So actually then you'll see the intensified fire at some particular place. It's the phase 2 preparation, and that is how you can predict the counterattack, which on the phase 2 will be imminent. The phase 3 is breaching. Actually, I don't know what those dots are. So far, we are unable to reach that in that particular stage. So we have the special engineering equipment or demining equipment that will concentrate the fire at particular spot, plus mortars and artillery are helping those vehicles and concentrate their fire on the minefields together with the Russian positions at the first line. The main idea is to get the free way into the Russian positions to go to the direct fight. The phase 4 is the assault, where actually infantry, heavy tanks go first to take the Russian positions at the first line and then intensify their fight with the enemy. For this stage we need Leopard 2 tanks and Challenger 2 heavy armored tanks to be protected and push the Russian army with this iron fist. The engineering equipment stays behind, and at this point we may see the success or not success of the counterattack, or it's better to say attack. Because if you're not able to break through the trenches and barricades at the first line, your attack will fail. Phase 5. Consolidate and reorganize. After you break the Russian defense lines, you move Leopard and Challenger tanks a little behind to refill the ammunition to refuel them for further jump. And during this stage you move the lighter armored vehicles, which are much faster, and they're able to seize the Russian resistance points at the second or even third line of defense. That was the tactics of Ukrainian forces in Kharkiv region and also in Kherson. If we speak about the Kharkiv region, mostly Russians did this maneuver after they saw the Ukrainian tanks. And the last stage to break through the Russian defense lines is just to continue the attack, bringing more reserves to the front. The reloaded Leopard 2 tanks, Challenger 2 tanks, and more armored vehicles, more infantry, more everything. And also you put forward the engineering equipment, because if you have the natural obstacle, for example river, you need to build a bridge. At this particular point, artillery fire is also important to cover the troops. And if you did everything successfully throughout all of the stages, you eliminate the forces, their artillery, their supplies, and you penetrate their defense lines. You go on both sides and attack the Russian other positions from behind, which is much easier. So the idea now is to find the weak spot where you can penetrate the Russian defense with lots of the forces. Since Russia built very long defense lines, it would be very easy to find that spot, because they simply do not have enough resources to organize the normal defense on the south. Mostly they concentrate their forces on the eastern side of Ukraine, Donbass. They've built the trenches, but they cannot put their units or forces everywhere, as well as artillery. Also, their supplies are not always good. Or it's better to say always not good. And I believe that Ukraine nowadays has everything, all of the units are ready for the counterattack, but the weather is not good and we need it to be very nice, because we need to cover lots of the distances very fast. But the weather forecast is quite good for the first half of the May, so we may expect the counterattack very soon. And it seems like someone is helping Ukraine to cut the supplies. For example, this happened in Bryansk. The train full of fuel just went from the rails because the rails were damaged with explosion. At least Russian media reported that, and the train is more or less okay. I would say there were just few wagons and there was no big fire in that place, but the train itself, the locomotive, is completely lost, and the train drivers haven't sustained any injuries or wounds. But supplies were cut for some time. The Ukrainian Defense Minister Reznikov today said that we are on the final line in preparation for the future counterattack. And he reassured that the counterattack will be successful. My friends, I have no doubts about the future counterattack. The only question I have is where and when it will be. I believe during the first half of the May on the south part of the front lines. But it's just my guess, my opinion. So the factors that will be successful for Ukraine is that we have enough weaponry for that, and our Western allies already say that Ukraine got 98% of everything we need. So 2% I think it will not play a great role, but we will receive everything, I think this week or something. Our soldiers were trained to fight on a battlefield, and also they have the military experience. We have thousands or tens of thousands of the soldiers that went through the special training in the Western military helps, and they can handle the Western-made weaponry. It's great. The third factor that guarantees the success are the supplies, and it's the most important factor. Because even the best tanks in the world are unable to run without the fuel, and unable to shoot without the ammunition, so we need to deliver those at particular point at particular time. And Ukraine looks much better in supplies compared to the Russian army. John Kirby today stated that the Russian offensive in Bakhmut failed because they have severe losses. He said that totally from December, Russia lost around 100,000 soldiers there. With this number, we're not speaking only about the KIA, but also about the wounded soldiers. And also John Kirby added that there will be more military help provided to Ukrainian army. But as for the counteroffensive, Kyiv has already received almost everything it asked for. My friends, again, I'm not a great fan of this counteroffensive operation because I know that we're gonna have the losses. If you're an attack, you lose 3 times more soldiers compared to the defending side. Maybe it will not be applied to the Russian side because they have very terrible supplies, but in general, I would like the Russian army to withdraw their forces from Ukraine. It will make the life for everyone much easier. But unfortunately, Putin is just a blind, bloody dictator who lives in his own world, where the Russia is the mighty force and able to establish the control all over Ukraine. So the only way out for now, unfortunately it's true, is the counterattack. This time we have the article published on Dead Times that South Africa asked Putin not to come for the BRICS summit. So they want Putin to attend the meeting via Zoom, because the South Africa signed the Rome Statute, which obligates the country to comply with decisions of the International Court. We have no option not to arrest Putin. If he comes here, we will have to arrest him, say the spokesman of the South African government. So as you can see, the decision to apply the international warrant on Putin was very smart. Ukraine continued to use the Zuni rockets on the attack airplane Sukhoi Su-25. Those rockets are old but gold. They have much longer range compared to the Soviet-made S-8 missiles, which is much better for the attacking airplanes like Sukhoi. About the yesterday's Russian attack on the Pavlograd, they reported that they demolished the Ukrainian ammunition warehouse, but actually it's not true. There was the storage of the rocket fuel. The rocket fuel that stayed in Ukraine after the collapse of the Soviet Union, so it was cheaper just to store the fuel in some of the facilities in Pavlograd rather than to move it somewhere to waste. So Russia launched the drone, totally wasting the reserves of the rocket fuel, and unfortunately many of the households around got damages, but no casualties were reported and some of the civilians were delivered to the hospitals with injuries. And as I told you yesterday, from the explosion I can say that there was the fuel. And this is the place of the storage on the northern part of the city, and the households that were damaged are in the private sector over here. And there is the diplomatic fiasco of the Russian Federation. Recently there was the resolution voted in United Nations, the resolution about the cooperation of United Nations and the Council of Europe. In that resolution text, Russia was named as the aggressor country that attacked Ukraine. And it is one of the main reasons why United Nations should cooperate with Council of Europe. So 122 countries voted for it and just 5 against. The 5 countries are Syria, Russia, Belarus, Democratic Republic of Korea, which is the North Korea, and Nicaragua. But China over here, if you will see it, voted for it. Usually they never support the resolutions that Russia doesn't like. But here they support it, and it happens after the Xi Jinping visit to Moscow. So something went wrong in their relations, and also Kazakhstan supported the resolution as well. Interesting. As I say to you, Russia gets more and more isolated. Probably Russia is in lack of the Shahed drones because this one was spotted today in Ukraine. It had no explosion and probably was used to deflect the radar systems of Ukrainian air defense. And according to some Finnish resource, Finland is getting ready to give the green light for America to establish their military bases on the Finland territory. They say that those bases will be clear of nukes, but still they will be very close to the Russian border. And Switzerland today replaces the Russia in the presidency of United Nations Security Council. A chance to give impetus to the council's work. Indeed, after Russia, it will be improved. My friends, now press the like to this video, and also if you want to support my job, there are some links in the video description just below. You may support me on Patreon and also on the sponsorship on this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for your awesome support. I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.